Hello, and thank you for joining our VMware Disaster Recovery webinar this morning. So I'm joined by Hardev Sangira and John Wilkins.
Good morning, everyone. Bytes have a long-standing relationship with VMware, and we hold all their top-level accreditations. We've been looking forward to them announcing the DR solution, so we've been waiting that for quite a short time now, but many businesses have no planned DR solution, and that leaves them wide open to the risk of the impact of downtime or the loss of critical business data. So with this, it makes DR obtainable and workable for every Bytes customer. After the webinar, if you speak to your Bytes account manager for further details on how we can help you out, and we can also organise demonstrations of this for you. So I'll hand you over to Hardev.
So, my name is Hardev Sangira. I'm very pleased to be talking to you this morning about VMware vCloud Air and DR as a service particularly. I've been with VMware some 8 years now, and been really looking forward to helping our customers positively impact their businesses via this excellent technology. And of course it does build on the technology that most of you are probably running today for your production environments. So let's get cracking, and we're going to start off with I guess a made-up word, something that is actually at the heart of VMware's differentiation, okay, in this thing called hybridity. It doesn't really matter how you actually pronounce it, but really the strength behind our solution is that whether you're using the DR as a service offering or the base infrastructure as a service offerings from vCloud Air, what you're doing is essentially you're extending your on-premise environment, and not just the technical capability, but you're extending the knowledge that you have in how you manage VMware environments. The core, the base container is still a virtual machine, and you know exactly what to do with VMware virtual machines. You know how to protect them, you know how to manage them, and that is really what's at the heart of the strength and the differentiation. Okay. So vCloud Air is the hybrid cloud. Now I should just point out that a couple of weeks ago, actually at VMworld in America, we rebranded something called the vCloud Hybrid Service to be vCloud Air. So not all of the materials have kind of caught up with that. So sometimes you might see vCHS or vCloud Hybrid Service in the documentation or the slideware. That's all now called vCloud Air, right? And probably enough said about that, the better. Now, I've kind of already made this point, but let's just kind of build upon this. So you're running an environment on-premise, your data center, and you need access to an environment for all kinds of reasons. You know, there's you might be just be running out of capacity, don't want to build a new data center. Maybe you need to burst on a seasonal basis. So you know you might want to move one of your web servers or a group of web servers over to vCloud Air in order to take advantage of perhaps the Christmas period, and I think probably all the planning in retail environments for that is certainly well advanced at the moment. Okay, common management. So you know, should you use a different tool to manage your cloud environment to the one that's on premise? Wouldn't it be great if you could use vCenter, for example, to manage what's going on in the vCloud Air environment? Well, the answer is and also network.
Hardev, sorry. Hi, Hardev. Sorry to interrupt. We're having a bit of a problem seeing your screen. On the right-hand side of your screen, you might need to minimise the boxes.
Okay. Let's see what I can do here. Okay. Right. Can't you see a minimise?
Is there a red arrow? A red
Yeah.
box with a white arrow in it, that might work.
Has that done it?
Oh, there's just one more small box that needs to be moved.
Okay.
Perfect. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers, Hardev.
Thank you. you. So you should be able to see the slides now. If I just kind of flip back through just a couple of the slides just to kind of show you if you think you've missed anything. I don't think you have. Okay, so we were talking about hybrid cloud, and I'd moved on to seamless networking. So, you know, you shouldn't really need to learn anything new in order to utilize the vCloud Air service, whether it's the DR as a service component or the base component, the infrastructure as a service component. So your understanding of networking and IP addresses, network masking, NATing, all of the skills that you have to manage your on-prem environment are applicable in using the vCloud Air service. Okay. Now, the service vCloud Air was announced in the US last year, and we've been rolling out data centers and have plans to roll out more data centers as business needs dictate across the globe. Okay, so we are already up to 2 data centers in the UK. They are both in the south, and we are looking at bringing online capacity in France and Germany. We've already made announcements about Singapore and Australia.
Yeah, but I'm dialing in, so if I'm at my desk, put it on my phone.
We'll actually take the lead, okay, for example. Okay, we won't ship it anywhere else. Okay. Okay, so let's kind of dig down into, you know, what do you actually get? Okay, well, firstly, just before we kind of move on to discuss this thing called DR-VDC, a DR, Disaster Recovery Virtual Data Centers, that's the one in the dotted blue box there. Let's just talk about the core services. Okay, so in total there are 3 kinds of service you can buy. One of them is the DR as a service option. If you look there, you can actually see something called the dedicated cloud instance and the virtual private cloud instance. Okay, so those 2 are both environments that you can run virtual machines, you can run your services and your applications. Now the dedicated one is where the compute and memory and the management stack is dedicated to you. You would be the only tenant in that environment, and you can choose to subdivide that into logical data centers, for example, for test and dev, user acceptance testing, whatever it might be. Now, if you look at the virtual private cloud instance, that's pretty much the same, but you would share the resources in a multi-tenanted environment. Now, if we move on to the DR-VDC instance, this is the target for your virtual machines to be protected. We'll look at how that's done in a little bit more detail as we proceed. And the DR-VDC instance is rather like a virtual private cloud instance. It exists in a multi-tenanted environment, and the idea is that you replicate the data that you need to be recovered, and of course part of that data would be your virtual machines, and then if you do have want to declare it disaster, you simply bring them up with appropriate networking and everything else in the DR-VDC instance. Okay, so if you look over on the left side of the diagram now, you can purchase this service up front, and the increments, the length of the subscription is a month, 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months. Okay, and that includes everything that you need. There are no extras. The only extras that you might want are if you need more storage to protect your environment, additional public IPs, and you might want to do more than the 2 tests that we include. Okay, so a couple of times a year you might want to say, VMware, I need to do a complete test. I want to fail over my entire environment and see how it functions for audit purposes, whatever that might be. And so you can actually go ahead and do that, and our support center staff will be online with you when you undertake that exercise, and that's all part of the actual cost, etc. There are no costs for sending data into the service or data coming out of the service, and there are a few other little bonuses that we include as part of the test. Okay, so if you look at the 10 gigahertz virtual CPU and 20 gigabytes of virtual RAM, what we don't do in vCloud Air is kind of specified t-shirt sizes or virtual machine or anything like that. So you can use these resources, you carve out what you need to specifically tailor to your virtual machines. Okay, so if you've got a large virtual machine, we're not going to insist that you buy a 4 vCPU virtual machine, but you've got to have half a gig or more of 512 gigabytes, for example, or more of virtual RAM, just because you need the 4 virtual CPUs. Okay, let's move on. We look at the service in a bit more detail. So what happens is that you're essentially replicating using a facility called vSphere replication any virtual machines that you need to protect that are on your primary site, that's site A in this diagram. They are replicated synchronously to any one of the regions where we offer DR as a service. Okay, so you don't actually have to replicate to the US, data sovereignty things notwithstanding, but I imagine most customers, if they're UK based and using the UK data centers, would want to replicate to a UK based data center. Okay, so out of the box, there's nothing that you need to change in terms of your virtual machines or anything like that. And you can actually, there's a dial that you can use to select the recovery point objective, which is quite an important aspect of DR. And you can select 15 minutes to 24 hours, depending on kind of what kind of link you've got going out of your data centers into over the internet and into our data centers. Okay, you can use, if you like, unrestricted internet. There is no special connectivity that you need in order to utilize this service. Now, if you had a lot of virtual machines that you need to synchronize their data, a lot of activity going on, then you might need to look at some kind of an MPLS or dedicated link between you and our data center here in the UK. Okay. So if you kind of look at what's included at the bottom there, I did talk about this ability for you to say twice a year, VMware, you know, I want to do a test, I want to test this stuff out, and off you go. And like I said, we will actually assist you in doing that. Now, if you did need to fail over, you did have a disaster, then free of charge, you can run in your virtual data center for 30 days. Okay. Now, if you need to run for longer than 30 days, because, dare I say it, your source data center is actually no longer there, you know, it could be a smoking hole in the ground, it could have been flooded, whatever it might be, then you simply upgrade your DR as a service environment to a regular VPC and you know, pay your charges accordingly. Okay, so we aim to make this very flexible indeed. Now, in order to synchronize your data, you know, if you've got a lot of virtual machines, a lot of data, then there is a facility where you can seed the replication. That's where you actually copy virtual machines in state A onto a NAS appliance that we will ship you. You ship us the NAS appliance, we upload it into your DR virtual data center, and then you can do a final sync up, and then you're good to go. Okay, and there's an animation there that if my explanation didn't make it clear that you're simply replicating virtual machines from site A to site B, then hopefully the animation will clear up any doubt. So the power behind this, of course, is the fact that VMware Virtual Machine is simply a file on a file system, and if you want to recover that virtual machine and its associated data, you simply need a copy of that file, either instantly or asynchronously in the site in which you want to restart your applications. Okay, I've already hinted at this, and you buy the base service, the base subscription. You get a minimal set of resources, and they may or may not be enough to actually run or cater for your DR requirements. They're likely to cater for quite a few environments actually, but if you need extra stuff like more compute, additional IP addresses, you want to purchase the offline data transfer or direct connect, which is the capability where you have essentially a dedicated link coming into our data centers, or you might actually say, in terms of our audits, you know, we are supposed to do a failover test once a quarter, then that's fine. you simply purchase additional failover testing, and you're good to go. Again, what makes this environment so flexible? What's at the core of it? Well, it actually does have ESX. Actually, I should say more accurately nowadays, ESXi at the heart of it. It's vSphere, it's core vSphere. It's the service that you kind of know and love. You're running your production, test dev environments on it today, and you've got all those skills. Okay? You don't need to worry about the underlying hardware because the virtualization makes the hardware independent. You simply don't care about it. The other thing, a big headache that it can take away from you is that you don't need the skills or capability to actually know anything about SAN-based replication, right? Now, where SAN-based replication does come into its own, of course, is you'll probably get sharper RPOs and RTOs. If you need sharper than 15 minutes, then this service isn't for that particular application. So there'll be the other ways of actually accomplishing that. Okay, and encapsulation is simply making that comment about everything that you need to recover your application. It's in the virtual machine, and you need a copy of that. Okay. I did hint at kind of tools that you might be using in order to manage this environment. We'll look at them. We've got some screenshots of how you kind of set up this environment, and you'll be glad to see that you can do it all via your existing vCenter environment and the front end into that, which of course is the vSphere web client. It's all fully integrated and very easy to use indeed. Okay, so just kind of looking at things in a bit more detail. So at the top of this diagram, if we look at the architecture from a very high level, indeed, at the top there, you can actually see the dedicated cloud and the VPC cloud, okay, type 1 and 2. Those are environments in which workloads can be running live, if you like. The type 3 environment, which is the virtual private cloud for DR, all you're doing is you're replicating your virtual machines, okay? And they're in a kind of partially initialized state where they're not up and running. They're simply receiving the updates from your source data center, and they're essentially waiting to be initialized. Okay? And then if you kind of look at the bottom, the subscriber Acme Core on the left there, if you look at the bottom of that particular diagram, if you look at the bottom of the slide there, you can see an arrow that leaves Acme Core's data center, goes to a VM called source VMDKs, and then you've got the kind of encryption and the kind of tunneling agent that replicates your virtual machines up to the target environment. Okay? Now, if you needed to do a failback, you'd use a tool called vCloud Connector, and it's free of charge. And what you're simply doing is kind of copying the most up-to-date version of your virtual machine that you've been running in DR mode. Okay, so let's imagine you did a failover and you were running for 2-3 weeks, and you kind of need to go back to your source data center. Then you can copy the virtual machine back using VCC. The other thing that you can do is use reverse offline data transfer. So I talked about seeding earlier. You can do the reverse. Okay, you can copy what you've got onto a NAS appliance and get it sent back to us, so you're not shipping huge amounts of data over your links. If we look at what's involved in just a little bit more detail, you can see that the standard setup on your primary data center is using the vSphere Replication Appliance to target the virtual machines that you want to ship across to the vCloud Air environment. And there, what we do is we guarantee the multi-tenancy via a product solution called vCloud Director, that some of you may be familiar with. But to cut a long story short, you don't need to worry about that because the very heart of all of this is vSphere, and a slightly different flavor of the vSphere Replication Appliance, which just means that one of the targets that you can select for your replication is a vCloud Air or a vCloud service provider, and otherwise it's exactly the same as the environment that you're probably running today. Okay. I should say at this point that this is how the service works, this is how the service is offered. It's not Site Recovery Manager, it's vSphere Replication. Target your virtual machines, synchronize them up into vCloud Air, and you can restart your applications in vCloud Air. Okay. In terms of scalability, the way that it's supported is that a single DR virtual data center, and you can see three here. You've got A, B, and C over on the right in vCloud Air. They're designed to look after no more than 500 virtual machines. So you can have your primary site, if you've got 500 or less virtual machines, you want to replicate those, then you only need the one DR virtual data center. If you had more, then you'd need to configure perhaps additional virtual centers as well on site. There's a one-to-one mapping between the virtual center and vSphere Replication Appliance. And then you need to select additional vCloud Air services, i.e. additional DR virtual data centers. Okay, so you can actually start to scale up as you need to. On this particular slide, I just wanted to talk about encryption. And encryption is actually done in flight, and so it's between the vSphere Replication Appliance. Remember, that's a special version if the target that you want to select is vCloud Air, and the encryption happens between that and the service at the other end. Okay, so like I said, we make this simple to consume, we make this simple to use, and we don't nickel and dime you in terms of, well, actually you need to buy this and you also need to buy that in order to have a viable service. That's simply not the case here. Okay, so on your source site, what is it that you need in order to get going? Well, the simple thing is, in terms of vCloud Air, you just need a DR subscription, and as I said, you get everything that you need in order to get going. But on your primary site, there are some prereqs, I guess, and depending on kind of where you are on your journey with VMware, I think a lot of our customers are certainly at vSphere 5, but you need to be at vSphere 5.1. And that's because that was the release that supports what we call vSphere replication, which is host-based replication. That's where vSphere itself, our ESXi product, will actually be enabled for host-based replication. Okay, so you don't need anything else, right? You just need the appliance, which is free of charge. You don't need any additional licensing. And if you look down the column on the primary data center there, you can see the versions of vSphere. Actually, we can start at Essentials Plus, so a kind of very low entry level, and of course there's the higher end vSphere Enterprise Plus. Okay, now you're going to need vCenter 5.1 or above as well, and the vSphere Replication Appliance version 5.6. And that's the special one, as I've said, that's the one that enables you to replicate to a public cloud service like vCloud Air. Okay? And at a very minimum, of course, you're going to need some kind of connectivity that allows you to do the replication between your source site and these target sites. Okay, let's kind of just look at how you would go about configuring this environment, and it is quite straightforward. And you're probably used, many of you at least, are used to using the vSphere web client. Okay? This is the tool that kind of came in from about vSphere 5 for actually managing your vSphere environment. And you can see here that there's an icon called vSphere Replication. Right? So once you enable this, you go to the tool that you know and love, you use probably every day, and then just hit on vSphere replication. And then we've got a screenshot here of what the landing page or the interface looks like for the vCloud Air DR as a service site. Okay, so you kind of log into this with your credentials, and the red triangle there actually shows a cloud with a lightning strike through it. This means that this service is actually DR as a service. You can see it's on multi-tenant cloud, and you can see the CPU memory and storage that you've got allocated. Now, over on the left there is an important piece. So at the heart of this, we ensure multi-tenancy via a solution called vCloud Director. And the vSphere client on your local site needs to know what the API point is in order to get through to your DR as a service service. Okay? Now at the bottom there, you can actually see a status of replication. Okay, so we can see there's been an RPO violation on DR Mobile Access Appliance, and the second one down is OK, and there was another RPO violation on the system at the bottom there. Okay, that's where maybe you had a hiccup in replication, whatever it might have been, that meant that the RPO that you selected is kind of out of bounds. Okay? So you can see the system does actually tell you if there are any issues that perhaps you might need to pay attention to. Okay, but normally, of course, everything is okay, and if everything is okay, that means you can fail over, and the recovery point objective that you've selected, and it's 15 minutes for those 3 virtual machines there, is good to go for you. Okay, so that's the portal for the DR as a service environment. We can go back to the vSphere client. Remember the vCloud Director API that you needed, the URL for that. You simply add the URL and the service that you have with your credentials into essentially vCenter, and you're doing that, of course, via the vSphere web client. Okay, so you add that. Network settings. So when the service is set up for you, the DR as a service is set up for you, you actually get 2 default networks. Now, at any time, you can fail over a virtual machine in test mode, and of course, you probably want to bring it up on an isolated network. The system will initialize the virtual machine, it will come up, and you're good to go. You can actually get to the console. You don't need any internet connectivity for the base virtual machine in order to get to the console, to kind of log into the console via the console, look at what's happening with network, did all my services come up. So that's actually quite a powerful thing. And after you've done a test, you say, okay, tidy up, and the virtual machine is shut down. In a test environment, your replication was never actually interrupted. So it's quite easy and straightforward to do, and a kind of great, powerful indication of how this service is actually up. Okay, this is the kind of magic button. So you want to select where the target is for replication. Okay, so at the bottom there, we can see in kind of the blue highlight that the VDC name, the virtual data center name, in that column at the bottom there, highlighted in blue, is something that starts with 4 sixes. This is the kind of snappy service name that we provide for you. Over on the right there, you can actually see how you get through to the target replication appliance. Status is that it's connected, so very simple, very straightforward. We're replicating to a cloud provider. That cloud provider is vCloud. Okay, and then a little bit of a busy slide, but once you have a status of OK with a particular virtual machine, and we've got one that starts vCHS and ends in test there. You can see actually where it is, when it was last synced, what its recovery point objective is. And then if you select that virtual machine, then along the top there are a number of icons that you can choose to do further configuration with. You can actually pause replication if you need to. And then I guess the really important ones are the ones marked failover and test. If we talk about test first, test is where you don't want to interrupt your replication and you want to test failover. In that environment, you will end up going through a wizard that says, okay, bring this up in an isolated network environment, and as I've just said, you can look at the virtual console and just check that things are the way that you kind of need them to be. Right. Now, the more important one, and the one that is actually in red, is that you choose to do a failover. In this scenario, what you're saying is that, for real, I want to fail over this application, right? And from our point of view, of course, that's a virtual machine. I want to fail over this virtual machine. Okay, so I want to stop replication if it's happening, and I want to come up and running on a live network, perhaps, which is very likely to be the case, with connectivity to the outside world. Okay, so I want this application to be running in vCloud Air, and then you need to do what you kind of normally do to kind of redirect things like load balancers or whatever it might be, so that the application is now targeted in vCloud Air rather than where it used to run. Okay. Now, of course, if your home site, your source site, is no longer available, you can't get to it, the networking there doesn't work, you can actually drive this via the vCloud Air portal. You can say failover or indeed test via the portal. Okay, so you can drive from either end. Okay, so hopefully you'll agree. This is all quite simple and straightforward to drive. Okay, so we've been talking for the best part of 40 minutes now, and I've introduced you to the service, what it's capable of, and how you actually go about configuring it, and the fact that you can do test failovers. And I guess the most powerful thing about this is that if you're running vSphere internally, then you're likely already to have the source part of this. All you need to do is select the applications and the virtual machines, of course, that you want to protect, subscribe to the service, and it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so I think Amy and perhaps John now are going to see if we have any questions.
Yes.
Are you there, Amy?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Hardev. Okay, so if you do have any questions, if you just pop those into the questions box, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, then Hardev can answer those for you shortly. I think we have some already. 1 second. Okay, so Elliot has asked a question about pricing. So he said, how much will it cost?
Yeah, so that unfortunately I can't help you with. If you go to vcloud.vmware.com, there is some public pricing there. You'd probably purchase this via one of our resellers, and what we normally say is, because pricing can vary a little bit, is that you go via your reseller, and Bytes are excellent at this. So Amy, I kind of suggest you follow up with, I think it was Elliot, about the pricing around this particular solution.
Yeah, of course, we will follow that up with him. So we have another question here from Pradeep. So he's asked how it's optimized data transfer if there are high chance rate in VMs like database VMs. Is there any feature to get database, SQL and Oracle VM consistent replication? And he's also said, how much extra workload on with current network and back-end storage connectivity? Is it possible to use the same private IP in case of DR for VMs?
Yeah, okay, so there are a number of things there. So firstly, I think there's a question there about, well, how can it cope with applications that change a lot? Yeah. So obviously at the core of this, and Pradeep's kind of aware of this, and I'm sure other members of the audience are, is the recovery point objective of 15 minutes is going to be kind of reliant on the fact that you can actually ship the changes across in a timely manner. Now, we've got tools, etc. available. You can actually use vCenter. If you have vCHS installed, it will actually kind of tell you what's changing and what the demands are. So you can actually start to determine whether this service is actually going to be suitable for that application, that particular database application. Okay. Unfortunately, I would love to say, yeah, it's going to be applicable 100% of the time, but it does vary on a lot of things that are actually outside our control. Okay, and so can you just read the last part of that again, Amy? I think there was another question tagged on the end there.
Yeah, so the question says, is how much extra workload on with current network and back-end storage connectivity? And then it says, is it possible to use the same private IP in case of DR for VMs, which we are achieving with their current DR using SRM and Cisco OTV?
Yeah, okay. So this environment is not going to be as flexible as SRM and Cisco OTV, but we can support site-to-site IPsec VPNs, which will essentially extend your DR as a service environment, so it looks like an extension of your on-site data center. So there is scope for maintaining IP address consistency, certainly.
Thanks, Hardev. So you have a question here from Adam, who said, is it possible to protect or replicate physical machines via a P2V agent of some kind?
We kind of need to look at exactly what you are doing, but it's not really what this particular service is designed for. So if you've got a source VM, and that's really what the service is pitched at. If you're kind of doing this kind of live P2Ving of a physical machine to a virtual machine and then replicating that, I think we need to have a further discussion about how that's going on. But of course, if you do a P2V, right, and that's consistent, and you stop doing that, then we will support the replication of the newly created virtual machine into the service.
Thanks, Hardev. We also have a question here from Martin, who's asked, so where do you stand from a Microsoft licensing point of view? If you invoke DR, that might be something that one of our account managers can follow up.
Yeah, so so our understanding is that Microsoft actually do have provision for you to utilize existing licenses in a real DR environment, okay? And essentially that's what you'd be doing here. But we do ask, because there's all kinds of Microsoft contracts and small print and everything else, we do ask that you kind of check that is going to be okay. So yes, and Bytes, of course, again, kind of excellent at this kind of thing. And again, Amy, is probably one for Bytes to follow up with Martin.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we have one more question. So this is from Pradeep again. He said, is it support VM with RDM physical mode?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have today.
Super.
Okay, well, thanks. Oops.
Sorry, you kind of wind up, Amy. I'd like to thank everybody that came on the call. I know your time is valuable, and we always appreciate your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, and thanks, Hardev, also for doing this webinar for us.